morning. Good morning. It is Workforce Wednesday, but it's also Women's History Month. And to keep the motion going, we decided to have a live Mavens of Manufacturing today on a I know that's kind of out of character for me, but I love it because, again, it's Women's History Month and we need to keep the momentum going. So I have two very special guests today who are continuing to make history in manufacturing and engineering. And I'm super excited. They are from Sandvik Coromant. And we have Carrie with us and Aisha. Hello, ladies. How are you doing this Wednesday morning?
Great. Good. How are you?
I'm super excited because I normally just have one guest. A few times I've had two, and I'm really excited to have you two ladies because you both have very spectacular resumes. So I want to get into that a little bit. But first, can each of you kind of just give us a background of yourselves and how you ended up in manufacturing? Like, was this, a sector that you were looking into when you were growing up, or are you like most women who have interviewed and kind of fell into it by accident? So Aisha, you're at the top of the screen, so I'm going to pick on you first. Can you give us some background information about yourself?
Sure, Megan. That sounds great. First, thank you for having us here. I'm really excited to be part of your podcast today. So, manufacturing. When I was much younger, I actually wanted to be a school teacher when I grew up, and personal circumstances never led to that. But when I was in high school, I was very interested in hands-on activities. I did auto shop, wood shop, metal shop. Being one of the only girls in the class at the time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
my entry into manufacturing was really quite happenstance. Like you said, you're interviewing, you're looking for a new job, a new opportunity. But I very quickly fell in love with it. And I have since worked for 3 different tool manufacturing companies over the last 24 years. I've had positions I really started at the bottom as a secretary and have worked my way up throughout the years to get where I'm at today. And it's all been dedicated to manufacturing.
So were you always interested in sales then, or as you mentioned before, you started out as a secretary. So how did sales come into the
I
picture?
did. Yeah. Actually, my very first time on a manufacturing floor, I was in my early 20s and I just fell in love with the smell of coolant on the manufacturing shop floor, but also how things are made from, true raw material. I found it incredibly fascinating. The
Mm-hmm.
sales side really became an interest for me when it came to helping customers solve their problems out in the field and the technical expertise and demand that comes with a position like that. And quite frankly, it was going outside of the gender norm for me was a big motivator.
That's awesome. Well, Carrie, what about you? What's your background and how did you get involved in this great sector?
So my journey is a little bit different. Since I'm in human resources, I really entered the workforce in human resources. I graduated with a degree in psychology, and human resources seemed like a good, honestly, you're looking for a job right when you graduate, and it seemed like where I could use some of the knowledge I gained in school. And I started working for really in the industry more. Most of the employees were tradespeople, HVAC technicians, plumbers, electricians, and I've kind of stayed in that type of skilled sector since I started in human resources. It's been over 20 years now that I've been in HR, and so I joined Coromant about 5 years ago. And I was kind of new to manufacturing, to be honest with you. And it's probably good because it gives me some perspective on maybe what people from outside of the industry are worried about when coming into the manufacturing industry. And it kind of helps me in HR to try to think of or come up with ways to maybe explain to people really what it's like and what it's about coming into this industry.
I want to touch on some of that later in our conversation because I think that's going to be a really good discussion around workforce development and how we can get more skilled talent in the doors because we are struggling with filling positions, right? So you both have phenomenal resumes and profiles on LinkedIn. So what are some of your key career milestones and achievements? What have you been specifically recognized for in each of your niches?
You want to go first, Carrie, this time?
Sure, I'll go first. I've given that some thought, but one thing that one moment, I guess, that kind of stuck out in my career, I was leaving one position to join another company, and a manager that I worked for sent me a really nice kind of farewell, thank you email. And in the email, he made the comment that I had made the company a better place to work for the employees. And that's kind of my goal all the time, right? There's lots of ways to do that. But that's probably like, I mean, honestly, it brought me to tears when I read it because it's touching because that's what you hope that you're doing. And then for somebody to say that's what you've done. But that I've used that kind of principle and that goal kind of as my like guiding star with the things that I do in my job. My proudest, I guess, achievement is coming to work with Coromant and joining the manufacturing industry.
How about you, Aisha? What are some of the things that you're most proud of?
Well, when I started in manufacturing, I came in with just a high school degree, and I knew in order to really grow in the industry and grow in the company, it was important to further my education. So one thing I'm incredibly proud of while being a single mother, most of my life was obtaining my bachelor's degree. It took me 7 years while working at Sandvik Coromant and going to night school to get my 4-year degree. So that was definitely a journey, and it was celebrated. You know, I got some recognition from HR at one of our large sales meetings that we had, and that was really neat. But you know, once that was achieved, I really felt like some of the harder work started because my career started to take off a little bit from there. A couple other awards I've gotten, I guess, recently that I'm proud of. I got Support Person of the Year, my first year being in the sales organization when I was a channel manager. And, you know, that's a pretty big deal. You only get 3 in all of US that are nominated out of, 400 plus employees. So
Wow.
that was a really exciting accomplishment for me. I've gotten some Bravo awards in the past as well. But a huge highlight for me was when I got to attend the Women in Manufacturing seminar in September of 2023 as a breakout speaker. You know, Sandvik Coromant nominated me to participate in that event and really help encourage and motivate other women in the industry. And that was an amazing experience. And I hope to get to do that again.
That organization is so great. I've been a member for the last 3 years, and last year was my first time attending that summit. And I never felt so energized by attending a single event. And it was kind of funny because I literally like could not find more than 5 men at the time. Like every time I would start counting men every day, there I could only count up to 5. I'm hoping there was more guys there, but it was just interesting to like see the shift in attendance from it being predominantly women and not predominantly men. So that was kind of fun. So then can you each kind of go over how you ended up with Sandvik? Like how did you find out about the company? Why were you interested in applying to the company? Like what was it about Sandvik that really was like, yeah, that's the place I want to work at now? Aisha, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. So I found in my career prior to Sandvik Coromant that there was really limited growth opportunity for me at that particular company, or at least, you know, in my mind at the time in my personal experience. And I found Sandvik Coromant. It was a Swedish-owned company. At the time, there was similarities in the role and the previous company I had worked in. My ambition really at that time was to work my way into a sales organization. And I put in one resume. I interviewed, and I remember telling the hiring manager when he said, why have you seeked out? Why are you coming to Sandvik Coromant? And I said, because I feel this is an organization that's going to support me in my future growth and goals. And here I am, you know, many years later, climbing the ladder one step at a time, finally in that sales position that, I'd hoped to get to when I started with the company 18 years ago.
That's awesome. So you also mentioned too, while you were working there, you were going to night school as well too. Were
Right.
they helping? Like, how supportive were they during that journey for you? Because I know some companies will like go out of their way to really invest in their employees' continuous education. So was that kind of similar to your experience, or how
It
support
was. Yeah, it definitely was. I think Carrie could probably speak a little bit more on that than I could, but my answer to your question is definitely yes, Megan.
That's awesome. Well, then, Carrie, what's your story? How did you find out about Sandvik, and what was it about the company that was like, yes, this is where I want to go next?
So really similar to Aisha, I was looking for a company that could offer some more growth opportunities for me. And honestly, what really made me interested in Sandvik Coromant was the size of the company, the fact that it's a global organization. I was really interested in working for a company that worked in other countries and getting some experience that way too. So from the time I started to now, my responsibilities have expanded to include the Americas, which is really this great growth opportunity for me. And what I thought was so great about Coromant was when I was doing the research before my first interview, there was a lot of information about their really long history. They've been in business for a really long time. And also their dedication to innovation and being on the forefront of manufacturing changes, which to me sort of sent the signal that it was going to be a company with a lot of opportunity and a lot of stability. So that's mostly how I ended up applying, and I was so happy to be hired at Coromant.
I think that's a great topic to point out as well too, like their dedication to innovation and advancement, because I think a lot of younger generations are looking for something similar to that when they're looking for the place that they want to work at. So we can definitely touch on some of that later on in the conversation, but specifically with your careers at Sandvik Coromant, what sort of contributions have you personally made to help their company grow and be successful that you can speak on?
I can go first if you'd like. Coromant, from an HR standpoint, Coromant has some really great programs in place. And so helping kind of put some energy behind some of those. One of the big things that we do is a lot of touch points to measure and get feedback from employees, measure employee engagement. It's one of the things that when I try to look at the manufacturing industry, just on average, manufacturing employees have kind of lower engagement levels than maybe some other industries. And so, how do you improve that? By asking employees what's important to them and what the employer can do. So we put a lot of energy into that feedback process. So it's really kind of a continuous thing where we're soliciting feedback, having conversations with employees. I think that has helped with employee engagement. And also, one of the big challenges in the manufacturing industry right now is the workforce. We post a position that's hard to find skilled people to fill those roles. And I think, one thing that I'm proud of with our managers is kind of they've been working on and receptive to kind of opening their eyes to maybe not hiring the same candidate that they've hired for the last 10 or 15 years, and looking at maybe people with comparable skills who can learn to do the job. I think that has also, really helped. I've seen a shift with our managers, sort of being more open to different types of candidates.
How about you, Aisha?
Yeah, I feel like I'm far on the other side of the spectrum with Carrie, but it's interesting how our different contributions mirror or marry up each other in the organization. So when I started my career, I spent about 10 years in what we call today our customized solutions department. Every company has what we consider to be a standard product offering. One of the things Sandvik Coromant, as Carrie mentioned, is really great at is innovation. And our customized solutions team, I've worked a total of 15 years in that organization between different roles. being hands-on, supporting growth and development of new technologies for our customers is huge when it comes to company sustainability, but also giving our customers exactly what they need to improve their own productivity and cost savings, right? So working in what we call specials, I really felt like I contributed at the bottom line when it came to our customer satisfaction. In addition to that, though, I was a quality manager for some time. And as Carrie mentioned, we're a global organization. And I had a lot of global experience in that role, working very closely with colleagues in Europe and in Asia, and being able to identify best practices across the organization and implement process improvements that make our company operate better as a whole and more seamlessly from market to market was also a really great contribution I'm proud of.
That would be so fun to have like that opportunity to work just across different countries, because I feel like you learn a lot from working with different cultures and just different customer bases too, because it's not going to be the same thought process in different regions. They're going to buy and do business a little bit differently, and depending on where I've discovered in manufacturing, because I've worked with a couple international companies, and even with like marketing, it's a little bit different in Europe than it is here in America. So it's just really interesting. Carrie, you did bring up something about the workforce development, and I really appreciate that Sandvik goes out of its ways to like really speak with its employees and get feedback from the employees. And one of the things that we are struggling with is getting more individuals to come into engineering and manufacturing, but we also are struggling with retention as well too. And one of the buzzwords out there is DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I was speaking with one of my friends. His name is Drew Crow, and one of the things that he's noticed, we're talking about this so much that there is kind of a negative connection with it now, where it's making certain individuals feel uncomfortable to really talk about it. So I'm always interested in what companies like Sandvik are really doing to make positive strides with DEI, and how you're really, not just outreaching to different people of different ethnicities and genders, but also individuals who might not be normally targeted for engineering and manufacturing opportunities. So second chance citizens or adjusted impact citizens, uniquely abled individuals. What sort of things does Sandvik do in particular to really make individuals outside of engineering and manufacturing look at our sector and be like, oh, that would be the place for me to maybe start a career pathway?
Yeah, so I think you make a couple of really good points, and but the most important, the thing that we're doing at Coromant to try to get people interested in the manufacturing industry is working with local schools. So we have a manufacturing, a production unit in Mebane, North Carolina, and they have been really great at establishing communications with local relationships with local high schools. We had a middle school group come through our facility to see and it's so amazing to me, because also, since I mentioned earlier, I'm relatively new to manufacturing into Coromant in the last 5 years. I know as an outsider, you think manufacturing, I thought, dark, dirty, hard work, and you go into our facility, it's bright and clean, and there's cool robots all over the place. I mean, it's really fun, I think. And it's really exciting to see, these middle schoolers and high schoolers come in and walk around and get excited. And I think that's what we need to do, not just Coromant, but all manufacturing companies, is try to do that outreach to local schools so they can see what the jobs are really like, and that, they are using technology. It is a, professional and a safe and a healthy work environment. And I think that's the long game, because it's going to take a while for those kids to get into the to get into the job market. But we're also working with community colleges on apprenticeship programs and internships. And I think that's the future, really. And I think, just as people, we should encourage kids who maybe aren't headed for college to look at skilled job training. Either it's machining or anything else. Those HVAC or plumbing, those are great trades where people can build really good careers. And I think sometimes people act like college is the only way to go, and it really isn't.
We need to stop that narrative for sure, because I just feel like we're still with my daughter, for example, she thought that she had to go to a 4-year college and do nursing. And I'm like, no, I think you should take a year off and like travel around the world, get world experience, and then figure out if this is something. But Grey's Anatomy was like her favorite show, and she was just bound and determined to be a surgical nurse. So kudos to her. But again, when you graduate high school, you're still kind of a kid. You don't really have a lot of experience in the real world. And I think we put too much pressure on kids to just, figure things out in a way that, they're following their intuition. But that's just
I agree. I mean, and college tuition is so expensive, and there's nothing wrong with, actually, I think it's a great idea to, if you're unsure, maybe gain a skill through training or certification. And then like Aisha, you can join a company like Coromant who can maybe help support your efforts later on down the road to get a bachelor's degree.
Yeah, I really like that you connect with your local educational institutions, because there's a lot of communities that don't even know there's like major manufacturing happening in their backyard. And having an international company like Sandvik Coromant, that would be a great opportunity to learn too that, hey, there's other countries doing manufacturing, and kids are so stuck in bubbles sometimes, depending on how large their communities are. It would just be a good bridge connector for them. I do want to highlight some comments that have been coming in. So we have Jill, love hearing about how career paths are paved. Joni, insightful conversation, ladies. Bravo. Thanks, Joni. I miss you. I haven't seen you in a while. I hope you're doing well.
Hi, Joni.
We have Katie. Manufacturing is totally cool. Yes, Katie. We all love it. That's why we're talking about it. And then, yes, college isn't for everyone. And she also said, I am so sick and tired of the college. Don't get me wrong. I want my physicians and my lawyers and many others to have a degree, but it's not the only way. 100% agree. Well, I want to talk to you each individually a little bit, because you do have different roles, and I think it's important for our listeners to Joni said I think it's important for our listeners, like, what sort of opportunities are available in engineering and manufacturing, because I think one of the misconceptions too, especially with women, initially most of our roles have been in marketing and sales, but there's more to marketing and sales. Like it is, having to network and communicate and be very personal.
Oh, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Technical difficulties, gotta love them. But I think it's important to for younger generations too, to see that, it's not just hands-on work either. It's creativity and problem solving and people like communication skills. So I do want to start out with Carrie. You are in human resources, but you also have like, I can't remember what it said on your LinkedIn, but it's like a higher kind of certification. I'm probably saying this wrong, but you have a lot of experience with human resources. So my first question to you, how important is it for companies to have, HR policies and practices for manufacturing, especially like, I've worked with a lot of family-owned businesses that were smaller, and they only had one person in HR, but they also wore many different hats in terms of human resources. So how important is it to have effective policies in human resources for manufacturing?
Well, I mean, of course, being in HR, I think it's really important. But I mean, from a basic level, those policies can help, limit the liability for the company, help keep people safe, give them ways to raise complaints and have those reviewed. But I think HR can also add some value in helping implement programs to help with, attracting candidates, like working with managers on programs with schools, or how to evaluate their candidates or do good interviews, things that we can do around retention, like making sure that we're offering competitive benefits and pay for especially the younger generation coming into the workforce. They're a lot more vocal about wanting work-life balance and benefits and time off. And I completely agree. Work isn't the most important thing in our lives. Like, we want to make sure, that we're there for our families and our passions outside of work. And I'm glad they're bringing some of this up so that, we can help with the listening part and making sure that we're offering good benefits that attract people. And so I think there's those sort of like basic level things that we do to be legally compliant. And then there's these processes that we can help build to make work a positive experience so that people, can take advantage of the opportunities, which is great, because when that's one of the things that gives me the most satisfaction is watching people develop and grow their careers, grow their earning potential. It means so much to them and their families outside of work. It's a great way for us to help support the business and, our employees as people too.
Does Sandvik offer anything or have like a process in place? So one of the things that I've been hearing a lot lately on how to attract more women and retain them is actually sit down with them and ask them certain questions about, okay, where do you want your career to go? And Aisha, I know that you mentioned something before where like, yeah, Sandvik was a good opportunity for me because I knew I could grow in my career. From an HR standpoint, Carrie, do you sit down with women who come into Sandvik, or anyone by that means, and say, okay, where do you want your career to go? What sort of responsibilities you want? And here's how you get there. And then like kind of develop a strategy for them to climb up the ladder at your company?
Yeah, so we require all of our managers to have development plans for their employees. And part of that would be having a conversation with the employee about how they want to grow and develop over time. And then the manager puts, training plans or a plan for them, for the employee to develop so that they're ready for that role. I think, Coromant offers a lot of, you mentioned earlier about the variety of jobs in manufacturing. It's not just, working on, producing the tools and sales and marketing. I mean, we have departments, and Aisha can probably speak a little bit better to this, but we have our research and development group and, tool designers. Like, there's all kinds of really exciting and interesting jobs and paths for people. So, do we get it perfect with every individual? Probably not, but we do sit down with people and ask them, what their future goals are and how they want to advance in the company. I think it's really important. And Coromant, another thing that companies, I think manufacturing companies need to do is dedicate resources to this, tuition reimbursement, invest in training programs. That's really, I think, important for retaining people and then also being prepared for the future.
Do you have, so one of the a long time ago, I talked to a woman who's owner of an aerospace company, and she said a lot of companies will put budget towards, their marketing towards customers or potential clients, but they don't really put budget towards marketing to younger generations. And she's like, so what we're trying to do is create a strategy where we're kind of allocating some budget towards marketing specifically to younger generations. So does how do you speak to younger generations? Do you connect with students? I know you mentioned that before, where you invite them in and they can take a tour of Sandvik, but do you do other things in particular to maybe have them commit to coming as an intern or apprenticeship? What sort of things do you do there to really get them hooked on wanting to be an employee at your company?
Yeah. So, I mean, our goal hasn't been to get people necessarily to commit to working with Coromant, but to be familiar with us and what we do and our industry. Because especially, I think our mentality is when we're talking to high school students or students in community colleges or the four-year universities, if they could end up working for our customer or a distributor, and them knowing Coromant is good for us, even if they're not working for Coromant. So, manufacturing companies don't quite have the glamorous, exposure to people that like Apple or Nike or other companies do. So we try to invest in building those relationships. And Coromant has a really great employer branding strategy to try to, in a nice, succinct package, kind of explain to students or people who aren't familiar with Coromant what we do, what our driving strategy is, and what's the value for employees to coming and working with us. And what I see with younger people, they're interested in the technology parts of our business. And what is really, really interesting to me is people, especially like college age kids, will ask a lot about our sustainability policies and our diversity and inclusion policies. They want to work with a company that is committed with those things. I think it's sort of like a bellwether of what type of company they're coming to work for. And I think sometimes some students are surprised that, yes, manufacturing companies have some really sophisticated processes around or programs around those things too.
I think it's really interesting that they're putting those at the top of their core values, the younger generations, and I enjoy that as much too, having conversations with them about that. In terms of, so we're at a really interesting time in manufacturing because we have so many different generations at once working. They say baby boomers are out the door, but I've met some that I think are going to work until they die because they just love working. But we have baby boomers, we have millennials, we have Gen X. I can't forget Gen X because they get mad sometimes if we forget them. And then we have Gen Z, and then I think Gen Alpha, the oldest, is in their teens by now. So what are some of the things that you do as a company to really connect the different generations together? Because there are instances where, there's some clashing there, but how do you as a company really bring everyone together so that, they can work with so many different personalities and learn from one another, but also mentor one another?
So when we bring in new hires, one of the things that we try to do is pair our new hires with a longer tenured employee so that they can get to know each other. But we have these at Coromant. I was amazed at the retention, the longevity of the employees there. So we've got some employees that have a huge amount of knowledge about the company, about our industry, the tools that we offer. And we don't want to lose that, right? So we know these, people will retire at some point. I think the best way is to try to help encourage those one-on-one relationships as new hires come in, to partner them with a mentor.
Awesome. Aisha, it's your turn now.
Oh boy.
Let's focus on perspectives on the sales and customer relations. So what sort of things does your team do at Sandvik to help build strong relationships with your distributors and your customers?
Yeah, so currently I'm the regional sales manager for the state of Michigan, the Lower Peninsula. I can't claim the UP. And I do have a team of 9 that report to me.
Okay.
And from a diversity perspective, we've got every spectrum of generation, as you referenced, I would say, within my team. So to support, Carrie's statement, there is a lot of cross training on the team and a lot of collaboration to ensure that we are able to build those strong relationships. Several newer employees on my team are working with several senior members on my team. And as Carrie mentioned, we try to create mentorship, not just in the formal way, but in the local way as well. So our relationships with our distributors and our customers truly is a partnership. We share a common goal to improve productivity by providing cost savings while continuing to grow business together. And in order to do that, we have to have open and honest two-way communication with our customers. We have a vested interest in our customers' strategy and to help them achieve their goals. It takes time to really get to know what those customers' needs are. We don't want to come in and just sell you a product. We want to sell you a solution.
Mm-hmm. So how has, so with COVID, everybody had to go virtual, and I'm still a big fan of face-to-face communication and that handshake and, that human contact. So what are some of the things that you do in terms of all of the advanced technology that's out there? Do you go to trade shows? Do you do in-person stuff, or is Zoom and, what we're doing now, is that one of your primary strategies for building those relationships? Or are you also maintaining that face-to-face kind of contact too? Because with Generation Z, a lot of them don't even like making phone calls. Especially my daughter, she would prefer text over anything. So how do you create a strategy that really, and especially with the younger leaders too, for some of these businesses, they don't want a lot of face-to-face contact. They just want to, straight to the point. Let me know if this is something that can solve my problem. So how do you appeal to each different type of generation that you're working with?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, when you talk about manufacturing, it's really hard, and I'm going to be a little sarcastic here, but it's really hard to support a machine operator at a spindle and tell them how to, reprogram or run their tooling to optimize their performance through a Teams meeting. So a lot of what we do is very face-to-face and in-person on customer shop floors. But I think it's a twofold approach, because we do also offer trainings to both our direct customer base and to our distributors. And throughout COVID, and probably even for a year after that, a lot of that was done virtually and online. We've seen a bit of a shift out in the market where, people are tired of getting on video chats all the time. And we are seeing a bit of a pull for more of that face-to-face interaction, even when it comes to trainings that we know could be done virtually. But again, I do have a very large territory and, X number of people supporting. So there will be times where we do have to support customers on the phone or even FaceTime on the phone. A couple of my guys have told me stories where a customer has called them and literally taken their phone and shown them on the spindle. Like I said, it's hard to do, but it's not unachievable. And we'll give them as much technical advice as we can until we have the ability to get in and on site. So
manufacturing, I mean, it's ever changing. The pace that, technology is advancing is incredible. And one of the hardest things I think is keeping up with those advances and really knowing what you're talking about and, how things work and what the names of things are. So with Sandvik, how important is the role of technical expertise and solutions-oriented selling? And, what do you do to really help prep some of your new sales members to really be able to talk about those solutions? Because it's going to vary depending on the company and where they're at. How important is that technical expertise, and what do you do prepare for?
Well, I mean, that is one of the things the frontline sales force at Sandvik Coromant is known for, is the technical support that we're able to provide our customers. Again, we don't want to sell a tool, we want to sell a solution. In order to do that, the team has to be knowledgeable on the product, and they have to know how to apply it, of course. So we are seeing a generational shift that's happening in the market. You know, highly skilled machine technicians are becoming fewer and harder to find out in the market. And I think that is very generational, right? You know, we're bringing in new people, you know, hire for passion, train for skill. And it takes a long time to really get someone strong technically, both from the customer's perspective, but also from our own individual company perspective. So our frontline sales employees do receive regular technical training. As Carrie mentioned, we have our headquarters in Mavens. We have a productivity center there. We have a very large state-of-the-art training facility that not only can be attended by our employees, but also by our customers. I have one employee today that is down in Mavens at a advanced turning training, and he's only been with the company right now for 8 months. So there is heavy investment in that training and getting the team up to speed. You know, sometimes we do have to do four-legged sales calls. That's the best way to share and mentor each other and really provide those customers those solutions. So, you know, today, providing those value-added technical solutions is critical to our success in improving productivity with our customers. And, you know, we want to make the shift together with our customers as well.
I love that. I think if you're in any position, whether it's human resources, sales, marketing, I think training all of your employees on the technical side of things is just beneficial for any company to do. And I'm starting to see more and more of that. I have a friend who is the director of marketing for a manufacturing company, and they actually put her, I'm going to mess up the acronym, it's like CMSTE or something like that training. And it's basically just like giving her the overview of what mechanical engineering is and electrical engineering. And then this way she's able to use that information and put it in marketing materials. So I think that's such a great idea that your company is doing that. Well, I want to shift gears a little bit because this is Mavens of Manufacturing. And I really get excited of talking to different women in this sector because I hear so many different experiences, some bad, some really good, women who are just like, yeah, I entered in this sector and I've had a problem being a woman. I've had great support throughout my career journey. So I just want to get a little insight on, you know, what your experience has been as a woman in manufacturing, especially as women leaders. Like, how has that journey been for you in this male-dominated industry? Carrie, do you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. Yeah, so I mean, even right out of college, the industry that I was in was very male dominated, and I really benefited from having a mentor basically from the beginning who was a successful person in that company, and she was very helpful, open, and honest with me about, you know, things that I could do to sort of to set myself up for success. From everything from how to make sure, you know, to express your opinions in meetings so that it doesn't come up, you know, it doesn't come across, because women can sometimes use too many qualifiers like, oh, and, you know, in my opinion, or I think, you know, or saying sorry too much. I mean, she helped me in so many ways, either directly giving me that advice or modeling those kinds of things for me. I haven't had a negative experience, to be honest with you, working in, you know, male dominated companies. You know, being in HR is probably a little bit of a different experience with the management team. I think that for women, we need to, I don't want to encourage women to try to act differently or try to fit in. We should be able to come to work as ourselves and be accepted for that. And I think what has worked well for me in establishing credibility and building relationships with leaders and with managers is making sure that I, communicate clearly with them, how I'm there to help, having, information data behind the the suggestions that I'm making or the information that I'm giving them is all sort of what I've learned over time. It has helped me sort of gain that credibility and, be recognized as a leader within the group.
What about you, Aisha?
First, I love everything that you had to say, Carrie. I really support and agree with much of what Carrie said has helped me. Finding a good mentor, could be male or female, in the organization. I personally, I have experienced some gender bias in my career as far as trying to reach my goals and ambitions. I have not experienced that at Sandvik Coromant. I am very proud to say that. And for me, seeing women pave the path before me was a huge motivation, and it made my goals achievable in a real kind of way. There are always going to be those women out there that want to be the first. I'm okay with being the second or the third, as long as I know it's a possibility. And we have some phenomenal female leaders in Sandvik Coromant globally, and they've mentored all of us. For me, I am going to throw a plug in on one of my favorite books that I've read several times in my career, and it is called How to Play Like a Man and Win Like a Woman. It is a fantastic book. I have it right here because I can't remember off the top of my head who the author is. Oh my gosh.
That's okay.
Evans. Last name is Evans. I'm trying to remember her first name. Anyways, I've read that book a couple times, and Carrie, you had brought up you really need to just be yourself. And I think for a good portion of my career, I quite frankly was just trying to be one of the guys. And some of the best advice I was given was stop trying to be one of the guys and just be yourself. But that book helped me really understand the way men and women approach situations differently. And working in a predominantly male industry, it's important to know that men like to have a meeting before a meeting. And that has probably helped me more so in my career than anything else. It's a really great book. I tend to read more than I rely on other people. I tend to rely heavily on that who's my role model, right? My mom was my first role model. She was one of the first pioneering salespeople back in the 1980s, when it was very unheard of to have women selling cars. Nowadays, you don't think about it. Women are all over the place when you walk into a dealership. When my mom started in the mid 80s, she was one of three within the entire southeast state of Michigan, working at, one of 50 different dealerships. So watching her walk up that male predominantly industry and achieve her goals was a huge motivator for me as well.
I would love to hear her stories, because I still hear some stories with women in the automation industry who are actually mechanics. They still don't have the trust of guys who come in to get their cars fixed. So I would love to hear her stories about, you're a woman, what do you know about, just those comments are. And that whole comment about men like to have meetings before meetings, I want to know why that is, because that just seems like a big waste of time.
You got to read the book, Megan. You got to read the book.
I'm going to definitely read that, because that's interesting to me. One of the things that I found interesting, because I've been a tech writer for manufacturing since 2008, and I remember entering this sector, and I noticed that there was a lot of competition with women too, because they just figured, there's only one seat at the table, we got to compete for it. Where now I'm seeing this shift that's been happening for a while, and women are just supporting one another like crazy, and it's super exciting to see. And they're not really competing with one another, and it's just really refreshing. So, I'm always curious as to what advice women have for other women, because I'm always trying to empower women and just be themselves, like you said, Carrie, and not try to be like one of the guys, because You shouldn't have to change who you are. You should always show up as authentic. And then this whole imposter syndrome thing that I keep hearing about, and I'm sure all of us have had insecurities and question, am I good enough for this position? And we need to stop doing it and stop saying sorry. Definitely, for sure, is one thing that I needed to learn over the years, because I said sorry for everything. But what sort of advice do you have for other women who might be thinking about, coming into this sector, but also for women who might be considering leaving the sector? Because there are some women who don't want to stay here.
I mean, as soon as you asked the question, it was clear to me what my number one answer would be. And I think women need to not be afraid to take risks. You mentioned imposter syndrome, and I've heard numerous times, when men look at a job posting, if they meet 60% of the qualifications, they feel comfortable applying. But women feel like they have to meet 100% of the qualifications before they apply. And I think we need to stop selling ourselves short, being afraid to take risks and put ourselves out there. I have crises of confidence all the time. But I think we need to, either to ourselves or to each other, be cheerleaders and put ourselves out there a little bit more. I mean, and if somebody feels that if they're interested in this industry, I say, go for it, do it. Don't wait until you feel like you've met every qualification and you're more qualified than everybody else. Give it a shot and see what happens. Nothing is, my daughter going off to college, we had long conversations about the fact that, if something, she makes a mistake or if something happens, most of the time it's not going to have a lasting impact on the rest of your life. We can fix it. You can recover from it. You learn from it. That's the thing, the most important thing. Put yourself out there, learn from the failures, and just keep going. Let's try to have some of that man confidence in ourselves. I think that's one way we could maybe emulate them a little bit.
What about you, Aisha? What sort of advice do you have?
I think Carrie just literally read my mind and said everything I was going to say, but just in different words. For me, having resilience, and again, Carrie said, put yourself out there, but from the resilience side of it, don't be afraid to take rejection and still move forward towards your goal. Just because you didn't get where you wanted to be the first shot doesn't mean you're not going to get there the second or the third. It took me multiple tries to actually make my way into sales because I wasn't going to give up. I don't take no as an answer. I think one of the best pieces of advice I was given in my career, and this applies to both men and women in general, but it has really shaped me, is to don't compare yourself to other people. Just compare yourself to who you are today and try to be better than the person you were yesterday. Try to learn something new today. You're going to find yourself on an everlasting growth path and journey that is going to keep pushing you towards the success that you wish to achieve. For women in particular, work-life balance is huge. I was a single mom, working full-time, going to school part-time. It wasn't easy. Having an employer that understood that was a priority and able to work and manage those schedules as well is really important. Know that you're investing your time in the right company just as much as the company wants to invest in you to grow in your career.
I love that. I think the comparison part is huge too, because since everybody is on social media platforms and stuff, it's so easy to get caught up in everyone else's successes and feel really bad about it. It's like, no, you can't do that. Like, just because they're ahead doesn't mean you're not. Like, you're at the moment where you're supposed to be at. Well, looking ahead, what are some of the things that you are seeing for the future in manufacturing, within your own niches, and what are some of the trends that you're really excited about seeing? Carrie, do you want to start
first? Yeah, sure. I think, the trends that I'm excited about, because I feel like we're positioned well to meet this is the whole technology is changing so fast. We're really embracing that growth mindset, investing in training and development, helping employees understand the opportunities that are available for them in the company to grow and develop. I think those are things that'll help us keep up with the changes in the industry, retain people, keep people happy where they are. It was when my daughter, who is 19 now, so 7 years ago when she was starting middle school, we did an orientation. The principal stood up in front of everybody and said, as educators, we want to prepare our kids for the jobs of the future. And she said, we don't know what those jobs are. We don't know what it's going to be like. So we're teaching our kids to have a growth mindset. And that was really sort of what started me on the path of really incorporating that into how we work with employees, how we develop our talent development and training programs. That's, I think, going to be an important thing for the future, is encouraging that in our workforce and helping them develop and grow.
How about you, Aisha? What are some of the things that you're excited about on the sales side of things?
Well, I wouldn't even say so much on the sales side of things, but definitely on the manufacturing side of things. As Carrie mentioned, technology is ever changing and is changing at a faster rate today than it ever has. And what we're seeing in manufacturing shop floors is a huge shift to automation, robotics. And I think there's a big threat out in the market that a robot's going to take your job tomorrow if you're not careful. But there are so many opportunities where the human factor is the most important factor to achieving the goals of the company, right? The machines are there to help us, and we have to learn to work side by side with them. And it's really interesting to go into a shop floor and see a cell of machines and a single operation with a robot in the middle, and the employer make mention, well, this used to take me 4 people and I've got a robot and it doesn't take lunch breaks, right? And I can understand where that could be intimidating, but we as a society, that's where shifting into sales or shifting into being the ones that build those automation technologies is never going to go away. And it's important to diversify. As Carrie mentioned, we don't know what growth looks like. What is the future going to be? So stay open to what's going to come next, right? And follow the leading innovation out there.
Yep.
Well, I think you bring up an interesting point. It's those robotic cells that I think are really catching the eye of the younger generations, and it's making them want to work more with advanced technology. So you could basically use it as a recruiting thing, like here's all the cool technology we get to work for, and you don't even know if it would have the potential of opening up new careers that we don't even know exist yet. So. Yeah. A really interesting point that you brought up. Well, Carrie, Aisha, this has been so fun. I really appreciate you taking time out of the middle of the week to join me on Mavens of Manufacturing today. I had a lot of fun having conversations with you both. Is there any ask that you would like to ask our audience before I let you go?
Keep listening to Megan. I follow her on LinkedIn also. And, feel free to reach out to Carrie or I. I think, Carrie, you're on LinkedIn as well. So, we're here to help answer any questions you may have afterwards.
And make sure to check out Sandvik as well, too.
Oh,
Carrie,
well, yeah. I was leaving that for Carrie to tagline.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Check it. Yeah, definitely check us out. But I think we all should, if we're passionate, about the manufacturing industry, even if it's just a kid in your neighborhood, tell them how cool it is to get them interested in maybe learning more about the industry, because we need people to start getting excited about joining the manufacturing industry, which is, I think, way cooler than a lot of people even realize. So spread the word.
I agree. Well, thank you, ladies, so much. I really appreciate that. For anyone who tuned in today, thank you. We do have another episode of Mavens of Manufacturing this week on Friday, so tune into that. and stay with us just for a little bit longer. I have a really cool video from Sandvik, and I hope you guys have a great Wednesday and enjoy the rest of your week. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.